This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's going on, Real MVPs? Welcome back to us, because we have been on a hiatus for...
A siesta.
A siesta. We went into hibernation for a little over a month.
I mean, you were close to the country of Mexico when you went to San Diego, because isn't San Diego like right against the border?
Yeah,
almost?
It's really close. We joked about going to Tijuana.
Because you know all the good stuff.
All
the good stuff happens in Tijuana.
Well, of course. I mean, duh. But no, actually, it's great to be back. It's great to be doing this. It's great to be with you, Ricky. We actually literally have not seen each other.
Since the last episode.
Today, when we got out of our cars here outside the studio, is the first time that we've seen each other in probably 2 months.
I was going to give you a hug, but you're all sweaty.
Yeah, I wouldn't have hugged me either.
You're all sweaty. The one thing I'm going to ask you, because this is production here on the podcast, you mind turning the headphones up a little bit for me?
Yeah, sure.
Just that little gray knob. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I can hear you better. But
good. Excellent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Little production here on the podcast.
But we are really excited to be back. I know Ricky was doing some traveling. I was doing some traveling as well. It's just been very, very busy. We haven't been able to get into the same room, but we are happy and excited to be back. There has been so much going on. Baseball season. Obviously, we're past the midway point. Today, as we're recording this, was the trade deadline. Ended up being kind of an exciting trade deadline at the end. I said to Ricky, before we found out about the big deals that came out after the 3 o'clock Central deadline, and the 4 Eastern, obviously, I thought, what a dud of a trade deadline, but turned out to be actually pretty exciting. And then NFL football is starting up. Everyone has reported. We are getting into training camp. It is so exciting, and we are just right around the corner from preseason week 1, which is it's amazing. I can't.
Hall of Fame game is creeping up, man.
I can't believe it's here. It's so exciting. And what does that mean? Fantasy frickin' football.
You know what I say? Hall of Fame game is creeping up. You know when the Hall of Fame game is, right?
I don't.
Today, as this podcast is posting.
It is creeping up.
August 1st.
It is creeping up.
It snuck up on me.
It's here.
Denver and Atlanta tonight.
Denver and the ATL. You know who you're not going to be seeing in that game?
Julio
Jones. Won't be seeing him. He practices the way he plays, so he don't need to play in no preseason games, honestly.
We're talking about practice?
We're seeing it more and more often, though, that veteran players, they're not playing in the preseason. There's 4 preseason games. There's no need to be playing in there.
Will we even get a Hall of Fame game? Or will it rain so much that the field's unplayable like the one year the Colts were in it? And they said, well, I think it was Colts-Packers. And they're like, nobody cares about this game. And they just called it.
Yeah, well. It's true. They're right.
And we didn't get that 5th preseason game for the Packers and the Colts that year.
I mean, is anyone disappointed?
No, nobody's disappointed at all.
Not at all. Well, enough of that. Again, we are very excited and happy to be back here with you. Again, if you want to support the podcast, head over to patreon.com. Become a patron for just $1 a month. You can support us and what we are doing here. And Ricky, one of the bigger stories so far here in training camp happened right away to a receiver who had injuries last year, trying to get back to it this year, but already being stalled. AJ Green out with an ankle injury, 6 to 8 weeks at least. So that takes up, if it's 6 to 8 weeks, it takes us up to week 1 of the regular season, and that's probably not likely that he comes back then. Speaking with Zach Taylor, I didn't speak with him, but other people did, and it really sounds like he's going to miss a couple of regular season games, but hopefully no more than a couple. But a minor clean-out procedure for his ankle. Minor doesn't mean anything. He still had to do it. It was bad enough where he's going to be out that long. Ricky, what's going on with AJ Green? Have we seen the last of the good AJ Green? Is he really done? Should people be staying away from him in fantasy drafts? I mean, talk about AJ Green. Where are we at with this guy?
Well, I mean, I've been thinking about I thought about this as we were opening this podcast, where I don't know if I would push this button. Luckily, I don't have to because the league that I'm in is not a keeper league. We draft each and every time fresh. I know the big league that you're in is a keeper league, so you have to deal with it. How many keepers do you have in your league? 2?
So the 2 leagues that I'm in, the one is a 2-keeper league.
I'm talking about your big money league.
The big money league is a dynasty league. We keep 8.
Okay. Here's the question that I throw out, and I'll throw out to you guys, is are we at the point, I know that he only played 10 games in 2016, then another full season, was back to the full season in 17, had a good year, hoping he would build on it, then only played 9 games in 2018. I was hoping coming into this year that the trend would be AJ plays a full year, but obviously that's not going to happen. I'm almost at the point, he's going to be 31 this year. If you have AJ and he's usually a dynasty guy for you or a keeper for you, do you think about saying, I'm going to let him go? I'm going to let him go. He can be a draftable guy because I need to open up a roster spot for somebody. And if you're not in a keeper league, the easiest choice now becomes Tyler Boyd is now the most valuable Bengals wide receiver because, let's be honest, the Bengals aren't going to be good this year. Sorry, Bengal fans. It's just the truth. You're not. Now you're going to be even worse without A.J. Green. But you're looking at a team that receiver-wise, your top 2 wide receivers were A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd. And then behind them, you've got Cody Core, Alec Erickson. You've got Josh Malone, John Ross, who let's see if we maybe see something from John Ross. I know last year only had played 13 games. Played 13, started 10, only had, 210 yards, but had 7 touchdowns in those games. What are we going to see from him in a third year? Because as a rookie, we only saw him in 3 games coming out of Washington. Really, it just becomes Tyler Boyd might be the only guy because they also have Tyler Eifert, who they re-signed coming back, but he only played 4 games last year. So it's like he was injury bitten also. So it's like my big question is because A.J. Green goes down, first, do you not keep him and let him go, be a draftable guy? And number 2, is Tyler Boyd really the only receiver that you should target from this team, from this Bengal squad?
Well, I can certainly say that if I had A.J. Green on my team and he was your best wide receiver, it is always hard to let your best wide receiver go, especially a guy who, when he was producing and he was healthy, one of the best wide receivers in the league, hands down. But lately, all he has been is a walking injury bug. And that's really unfortunate. And he's certainly not in his young years anymore of his NFL playing days. I'm not saying he's old, but by NFL standards, he's kind of past that. And it's really tough. But I think that there's a point where you have to, if you're in a keeper league, you really can't keep him. I mean, this really kind of ties your hands and stuff like that. And maybe if you're lucky enough, you could go. Let him go, hope that no one else picks him up, and then go get him, throw him on your team, put him on IR, and then get somebody else. But, I mean, it's hard, but you have to go with players that are playing.
Yeah.
And you can't, sometimes taking a risk, doing that. Look at the people who took the risk on Le'Veon Bell, kept him all last season. All last season. Couldn't put him on IR, wasn't hurt.
Weren't you one of them?
No. I had him in the league that we're both in together.
Okay, was that because I remember us talking about it. One of us had him, and it was
it was me.
How long do I hang on to him?
And my dad, who's in my dynasty league
had
as well, had him, kept him the whole year, pissed at him the whole year. How did my dad end up? Not great.
I mean,
so that tweet that Le'Veon Bell had to fantasy owners, my dad was one of them.
See, but that's the thing where if it's a dynasty league, you can't get mad at that because, hey, I'm going to keep him. He's going to sign with somebody.
Well,
whereas if you're not in a keeper league, then it really plays into if you are going to draft A.J. Green, when do you draft him? Do you draft him and then keep him on the bench and hope he plays later in the year? Or do you say, fuck it, I don't even want to deal with him?
And end of the day, comes down to, if it's me, I see what he did last year. I see the injuries he dealt with last year. I see already, before we have week one of preseason games, he's hurt. I'm not touching him. Yeah. I'm not drafting him. I'm dropping him. If I'm a keeper league, I'm not keeping him. I'm not doing it. It's too scary. I would be going for Tyler Boyd. He's going to be one of the only noteworthy wide receivers on this team. Last year, broke out in his third year. Over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's going to be the main guy. Now, will he struggle because he's the main guy and there's double teams to his side and they put more pressure on him? I don't necessarily think so, but he is going to be the main guy, I think, without a doubt. So Tyler Boyd is certainly someone to target. AJ Green is just kind of on the downcline.
So it's interesting that you say that, because I pulled up AJ Green's. I'm going to pull up Tyler Boyd right now. If you look at Tyler Boyd last year, it was a tale of two halves, fantasy. And, of course, I'm going off of ESPN. Don't know if this is PPR or not. I don't think it's PPR. I just think it's normal fantasy. This was his first 8 games. And these are games that A.J. Green played beside him, because A.J. Green played weeks 1 through 8 and then played week 12, and then that was it. These were Tyler Boyd with A.J. Green out there. 2.6 game 1, but then 15.1, 19.7, 10, 4.4, 18.2, 2.7, 19.6. And that 4.4 was against Miami, had 44 yards on 4 receptions. And then the 2.7 was 27 yards at KC. After that, he didn't play the last 2 games, so that was 2 zeros. But after the week 9 bye, when A.J. Green was out except for that game against Cleveland, he only had 1 game above 10. And that game he had above 10 was that Cleveland game that A.J. Green played. So there's also that into it also. It's yes, Tyler Boyd's the guy. Tyler Boyd overall had a good season. But if you look at the games, he had a lot more double-digit point games when A.J. Green was out there compared to when, okay, I'm the guy. It's kind of like what I said about Juju in our season predictions on the onside kick that are coming out next week. When Juju's next to AB, it's fine and dandy because people are going to... AB is going to get the number 1 corner, and if he's going to get doubled, he's the one that's going to get doubled. Well, now without AJ, Tyler's going to be going up against the number 1 corners, where it's like the Josh Normans of the world. He's the one that could possibly be shadowed by that top corner, no matter which side of the field they put him on.
And that's why I wonder, will he be as effective as he was last season? Because if he's now the number 1 guy and they are putting their best corner, their top corner, or a double team or whatever over to him, because
who else are they going to throw to?
Wide receivers B, C, and D are not anything of great concern right now for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it starts to become a situation of, will Boyd be able to put up those same numbers again, or is he just going to be a guy who ends up on the waiver wire, who had a great season last year, broke out, but kind of comes back to reality?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at it too, and based off of last year, Tyler Boyd led the team with over 1,000 yards. AJ Green had 694 in those 9 games. Then after that, it's 439 for CJ Ozuma. Ozalma, I hope I'm saying that right, the tight end who played 16. But then after that, it's Joe Mixon, Giovanni Bernard, then John Ross, then Tyler Eifert, who only played 4 games. So it's with a team that's going to have new coach coming in, new offensive system coming in, AJ Green missing the first few games. I know that I told you in your league, oh yeah, trade your 3rd round for Tyler Boyd. I'm kind of talking myself out of it, only because of the question that you just asked of how is he going to be able to do against those number 1 corners. Yeah, he's going to get more targets, but is that necessarily going to come to more fantasy points. Overall, he might be okay, but week to week, you might have to pick your spot when it comes to Tyler Boyd, because the most points he had in games without AJ Green, 9.7 against Denver, but he had 97 yards, didn't get a touchdown, and then 9.8 where he only had 38 yards against Oakland, but got a touchdown. But he only had 5 targets in that game. So are those targets going to go up to where we get more of the 15 targets, 11 targets like he had against Atlanta or Baltimore?
And this is a perfect way to put it. I asked another one of my friends, I go, what do you think if I trade my 3rd round pick for Tyler Boyd? And he goes, he's on the Bengals, right? I go, yeah. He goes, yeah, I think he doesn't have anyone throwing to him.
I mean, Andy Dalton's good. He's not great, but I think Andy Dalton's still good to where I don't question the quarterback getting him the ball. I question the teams are going to know. Teams are going to say, hey, let's shut down Boyd and make other guys hurt us.
I question Andy Dalton a little bit. I think that Cincinnati really needed to go with a good quarterback in the draft this past year.
Don't worry, they'll be top 5 to get one this year.
I know. But I just don't. I don't think that they're a very strong team. They're going to run Joe Mixon into the ground, which is a little worrisome for Joe Mixon owners, in the sense of, I mean, look at Todd Gurley.
Yeah,
Todd Gurley has been the workhorse, and now he's got a knee issue. And does he bounce back from that? You have to hope that he does. But one never knows. So Cincinnati, it'll be interesting. I would not keep A.J. Green. I would not be drafting A.J. Green. And I would be a little cautious with Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, I would be the same. But at the same time, if you're drafting in a keeper league and you've got your number 1 guy set, Tyler Boyd might be a good option if you need a guy to be your number 2 at most, but a number 2, number 3 guy for your fantasy team this year, because who knows how many targets he's going to get. Is Tyler Eifert even going to be healthy? That's another question we're going to have to wait and see on.
Ricky, let's move on to our next player that we want to talk about.
Okay.
This one has not reported to training camp yet, and that is Ezekiel Elliott for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, is this a bit of a shocker? I'll be honest and say that I was a little bit surprised that he was holding out, but then I realized it's Zeke and it's the Cowboys, so they need some drama, so it made sense. But Ezekiel Elliott last year toted the ball 304 times, over 1,400 yards, 6 touchdowns on the ground. Had 77 receptions, 567 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air receiving. So 9 total touchdowns for him, and about 2,000 yards. Really an outstanding season, again, for Ezekiel Elliott. So the team, I'm just going to say they need him.
They do.
They need him. They're more worried right now with locking up Dak Prescott. They're more worried right now with locking up Amari Cooper.
Well, they
don't seem to be as concerned with locking up potentially their most prized possession in Ezekiel Elliott.
Well, the thing, too, that goes into it is not only do you have Cooper and Dak, but also out of the young players, you've got Byron Jones, who also is going to be up this year, and Jalen Smith, where I don't remember which one it is. One of the Dak, Jones, and Smiths is an RFA, so you've got a little bit of wiggle room there, because if he leaves because he's a restricted free agent, you kind of have more control in that sense. But I think it's Dak and Smith are unrestricted, so if you lose out on them, you lose out on them. So I mean, it's just coming up to, hey, the Cowboys are thinking, you know what, we've got these guys to deal with first, they're first in line. Zeke, you're next in line. But Zeke's at the point where, I said on the onside kick this week, he knows his worth. And for running backs, when you're carrying the ball over 300 times, I did the math. The year that he only played 10 games and missed 6 because of his suspension, he had already carried the ball, how many rushes? 242. If they kept up that same pace, he would have been at 387 on the year, the most he's ever had. And when you're carrying the ball that much, when you see running backs get to 30 and it's careers are over because you're the bell cow and you're carrying the ball so much, especially going through the tackles and stuff, because Zeke's a workhorse in that sense of, like, he'll run on the outside, he'll run up the middle, like, he's a physical runner. You got to be like, hey, let me get my cash now. So, like, I understand that. The question fantasy-wise that comes in is, if you're a Zeke owner, is this going to be another Le'Veon Bell situation? It has the potential, but let me lay it out this way. The point is, we've got two sides. Which side is going to blink first? Is Zeke going to blink first and say, you know what, I got to go out there and play, help the team? Don't hold your breath on that one. The other side is probably going to blink first, Cowboys front office, because it's funny. Jerry Jones right now is saying comments like, he went on, CBS radio and said you don't need a rushing champion to win. Like,
dumb.
But that's Jerry Jones. Like, I know it's dumb, but, like, you don't expect anything less out of Jerry Jones. I'm trying to look for the exact quote. Here's what he said. The point there is, you don't have to have a rushing champion to win the Super Bowl. I'm trying to put my little Jerry Jones inflection on it. Emmitt Smith was the first one to do it. That's one of the dilemmas at running back, is that the league knows that you can win Super Bowls and not have the Emmitt Smith back there, or not have Zeke back there. You gotta do it, all of the things, along with having Zeke, that allows you to have other players so that you can win a Super Bowl. That's what we're going through. Here's the problem with the Cowboys. If they don't have Zeke, they're not a good team. Think about the 10-game season he played. They were 5-3 going up to his suspension. Went 3-3 without. They lost the next 3 games without Zeke, because it was almost like we've got to learn how to play without Zeke. And then once they did, they won 3 games and ended up going 3-3 in those 6. What I think is going to happen is there's either 2 possible situations. Situation A, which I give a 75% chance that will happen, is that Zeke will miss between 2 and 4 games. After those 2 to 4, Cowboys front office, Jerry Jones in particular, will give Zeke the contract. Come in, save the day, put it on me. I'm the one that gave Zeke the contract, and if they win the Super Bowl, he'll claim all the rewards. And I say that because you look at their schedule, they play the Giants and Redskins game 1 and 2. I think without Zeke, Giants and Redskins, Giants maybe not so much without the receivers, but it's possible, they could go 0-2 without Zeke in those games. Then they play the Dolphins, probably a win, even with Fitzpatrick maybe being the starter. But then you play the Saints. If you don't have Zeke for the Saints, that's a for sure loss. So without Zeke, if he misses 4 games, you're looking at an 0-2 start, then 1-1, a 1-3 start in your 4 games. That's when I think the front office will blink and say, we got to get Zeke on here so that we can win games. Or the 25% happens and they don't blink. And Zeke ain't blinking. Because I'm telling you, Zeke ain't going to be the one to crack. It's going to be the front office to crack. And the 25% is he sits out the whole year. Like, that is a possibility for fantasy owners, is 25% chance in my mind we don't see Zeke at all this season.
Well, it goes back to what you said at the beginning, is that Le'Veon Bell, general managers and owners have to be mortified that Le'Veon Bell sat out the entire season.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they have a running back, or even a player in general, there's now the blueprint that it can work, that you will get paid, you will get your payday, and I don't know what will happen with Le'Veon Bell this year. We'll be talking about him next, but Ezekiel Elliott right now, he has the upper hand. He has the upper hand. Dallas is much worse off without him.
Mm-hmm.
He knows he's going to eventually get paid. Just a matter of how long will it take.
Yeah.
And Dallas already thinks, I believe, that he may hold out for a while because they went and they signed Alfred Morris to a 1-year contract.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not going to be over anytime soon. Just reading a report Here from NFL Network's Jane Slater, she was reporting on the Cowboys and asking if they were close to an extension. A source told Slater, quote, "Close? Nope." End quote. And then also, when asked if the sticking points were the length of the deal or the guarantees, the source responded, quote, "Everything."
Yeah.
End quote. So they're nowhere close. This isn't going to be coming to a head or anything anytime soon. Again, Ezekiel Elliott is looking at the blueprint that Le'Veon Bell laid out last season. And every week we thought, this is the last week. This is the this week coming up is the last possible week that he could be out, because if it goes past this week, he has to sit out the rest of the season. That week came and passed. He was nowhere near coming to the table for a deal, and he sat out the entire season. That's what the Cowboys potentially could have happened to them. If I'm Jerry Jones, I'm sorry. I'm going to pay the guy who is making the biggest stink about it, and pay him because guess what? You may not like his antics. You may not like some of the things that he's necessarily done. He's certainly not the most prim, proper guy who nothing ever happens to because he's always in line.
I will say, because I was by myself and didn't have anyone to like check me on it, that is the one point I overglossed in my solo talk about Zeke, which is important too, of like, do we want to give him that money because of how much of a headache he's been off the field? Like, there was a reason why he missed 6 games in 2017, because he was stupid off the field.
And people always said in Boston, "Oh, it's Manny being Manny." Well, people in Dallas say Zeke being Zeke, and that only goes so far because when you sit down, you really look at it. It's, do we want this guy? We want his talent. Do we want his attitude? Do we want the things that may come outside of it? But guess what? Zeke wins. Zeke scores. He gets the football in the end zone. And at the end of it all, that's what owners, general managers, and other players want to see. And I think that he's not going to be slowing down anytime soon. The Dallas Cowboys need to give him money, and they need to do it now. Otherwise, the Dallas Cowboys will not be back to the playoffs this season.
Well, and it's funny, too, because like you look at the Le'Veon situation, what started the whole situation with him sitting out the whole 2018 season was that up until the 2017 year, so coming into 2017, the most carries he's ever had in a season, this is Le'Veon, was 290, and he had 261 the year before, only in 12 games. Well, in 2017, he had 321 carries. And that's what I think we're at. And this is an entire now running back kind of thing, where it's these running backs know, hey, you know what? I know it's a passing league, but if you're going to use me 321 times a season, that's going to put wear and tear. And for Zeke, he's looking out right now. If he goes down this year, putting it on the field for the team, that's going to hurt him going into contract talks in his last season, where then the team can be like, well, you've got the injury question here. We're going to offer you, like, you're not worth the Todd Gurley anymore because now you've got the injury question. So, I mean, I know they're 3 years apart, where Zeke is 24, Le'Veon's 27 now. But, I mean, that's the whole thing of we're fantasy owners this year. If you have Zeke in a keeper league or a dynasty league, I wouldn't sweat it too much. It's not like you're going to drop Zeke. Just expect the Le'Veon thing that, hey, I'm going to keep him. He's going to be on my bench all year, and he ain't going to play. But he's going to then sign with he's either going to get a contract from the Cowboys or sit out 2 years, which I don't think is going to happen. I think the Cowboys, if he sits out all year, I think the Cowboys buckle and get him a deal because they'll miss the playoffs, and we need him. But he's either going to get a contract from the Cowboys and be back on the field again, or he's going to get a contract with another team. The question is, if you're in a non-keeper league, if I'm in a non-keeper league, based off of what we saw with Le'Veon Bell, I'm not drafting Zeke in the first round. Like, usually Zeke would be probably the 1, if not 2, maybe 3 running back off the board, depending on how you see the running backs coming into this season. But I look at it now, and it's like, with this contract dispute and what we saw with Le'Veon, where he actually sat out a full year, I look at it and go, maybe I don't draft Zeke in the first round. Maybe in the second round, it's a possible, like, then you're playing the game of, like, what round are you okay with taking him and how far you're willing to let him slide. Because there's a chance he could play, but we saw with Le'Veon now, we have a case model of he did not play. So there's a chance that he does not play in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is, and that's a scary thing.
Would you take him in the first round? Let's say you're in a 10-man league, 10, 12-man league. Would you take him in the first round, or would you wait until the second?
I would not, depending on when the draft is. Mm-hmm. If the draft was today, I wouldn't.
Let's say the draft is after preseason week 3, usually when draft weekends are for teams. And there's no contract in place, and it's looking like he's not going to play game 1 regular season.
I'd be looking elsewhere.
Okay.
I would be looking elsewhere. Because at the end of it all, yeah, you want to have the best players, but you need to have them on the field. Mm-hmm. You need to have them on the field. Yeah, it's a really novel concept, but you
and
cannot.
Sometimes you can have Maurice Jones-Drew, who's on the field, but he'll take a knee at the 1-yard line to let the backup vulture the touchdown because he hates fantasy owners.
That's an a-hole move. See, I'm so upset.
You're so upset you almost threw your tablet at me.
It's an a-hole move. But seriously, I think that it would be great to have a name like Ezekiel Elliott on your team. Mm-hmm. But if he has a big goose egg at the end of the year and he ain't winning anything, what does it matter? You need the guys to play. I would stay away from him.
And let me put this into context for you. And this is for the Zeke thing. First off, I'm going to ask you this question. I'm trivia time with Brandon Swanson.
I'm so bad at this.
How many running backs last year had 300 or more carries? How many running backs do you think had over 300 carries last year?
One.
Ezekiel Elliott. How many carries do you think the number 2 running back had? It's less than 300.
267.
Close. You want to take one more guess? Because you're really close. You're a little high. Like, you're in the ballpark. It's between 260 and 267.
263.
Closer. 261. Okay. Do you want to know who it was, or do you have an idea? He was a very young back last year. Very young. A baby back. In terms of Saquon Barkley, 261. After that, the third running back, David Johnson, 258. Number 4, Todd Gurley, 256. Adrian Peterson at number 5, 251, with Jordan Howard right behind him at 250.
Wow, they worked Peterson a lot, though.
That's the discrepancy, though, where, like, that's what Zeke's playing with, is if you're going to use me 40 more times than the next guy, and Saquon is a good back, and Saquon's about, 2 years younger than Zeke, so it's not like they're that far apart. That's what we're working with. Other teams are not using their running back as much as the Cowboys are. And the funny thing is, guess how many yards between Zeke and Saquon? About 130. Not a huge gap for that many carries. So it's like, even in the Cowboys, there's a lot of, hey, I'm going to run and I'm not getting anything. Where, like, yeah, I mean, yards per game, Zeke had more, but Saquon had more yards per carry, even if it was marginal. But, I mean, that's what we're looking at. And if I'm in a non-keeper league, I look elsewhere. I'm not looking for Zeke in the first round, and I don't care if I don't get him, because if he comes back, great. But I'm not flirting with that possibility of him not coming back. I think the Cowboys will blink, but yet again, there's that 25% chance in my mind that they don't.
It'll be an interesting situation to continue to watch as we continue to go through the preseason here. We're going to move on. We're going to go to the guy who held out last season all year long, and we're going to talk about Le'Veon Bell. Again, for those of you who live under a rock, Le'Veon Bell didn't play at all last season, and it really did hurt a lot of fantasy owners. I know specifically that it hurt me. I know I would have won the league as opposed to getting second if I would have had him. I know it.
You're talking about our league?
And yes, in our league. But seriously, it was so bad, and he knows it was so bad that he literally, a couple of days ago, tweeted an apology to fantasy owners for being out last year and said that he plans to bring them a championship this season with the New York Jets.
That's him saying, hey, it wasn't my fault that the team didn't want to pay me.
Well, exactly. But I also think it's hysterical that he acknowledges fantasy football. I think it's very funny.
And this is a side note, like really short side note. It's not like these players don't want to play. Well, exactly. It's not like they're like, yeah, fuck football. I don't like playing football.
That's their career. That's what they want to be doing.
That's what they love doing. It's just they know that it's a violent game. They can get hurt and get your money when you get your money. Go get paid.
Exactly. And for people who say, oh, no, they come on, they should be doing. They're making enough money already. Well, if you were in the situation where it was a difference between, let's say, $20 million and $60 million, would you leave the $40 million on the table with some risk? I don't believe so. I know our culture, and we're greedy as hell.
It's a conversation for a different day. I mean, it's criminal how teachers are paid in this country, but we're not going to get into that on a fantasy football podcast.
Do you know personally?
I do know personally. It's not great. Not great at all.
But I think that what we can say with Le'Veon Bell is he's now in a situation that is different than Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. I mean, in Pittsburgh, you had Ben Roethlisberger, who has been around forever, will not retire. I don't think ever will. He talks about it, but won't do it. They had Antonio Brown. They had Juju Smith-Schuster. They had really everything set up offensively. He now goes to the New York Jets, where they're in a bit of a retool, figure it out mode. So they go and get Le'Veon. They think that that's going to give their offense a big kick in the pants. Well, guess what? It's going to. It would for any offense. So Le'Veon Bell's, I think, a good fit there. I think he's going to be really, really good for Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is a good quarterback, and I think will continue to make strides this season. Le'Veon will help him do that. Le'Veon may this season have the most receptions that he's ever had before. So if you're in a PPR league and you have Le'Veon Bell, he may be one of the most valuable receiving running backs in the league this year. But then you also look at the Jets. They've got Robbie Anderson as one of their receivers. I want to say they also have Jermaine Kearse, unless they got rid of him. But
I'll spot check you on
the Jets are definitely, like I said, not the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Le'Veon Bell is going to continue to get his carries. He's going to continue to be a workhorse, and he's going to want to be, I think, this season more than ever.
So they're top three right now, according to our lads' depth charts. Robbie Anderson, Quincy Enunwa, Jamison Crowder, and then the number 4 is probably going to be Josh Bellamy.
Yeah, they got rid of Kearse then.
Yeah.
But I forgot that they brought on Jamison Crowder. He'll be an interesting addition as well, along with Quincy Enunwa, who was dealing with some injuries last year. But Ricky, Le'Veon Bell, in your mind, is he coming off from last season into this season? Is he going to come out and be fresh, kind of how they've already talked about so far in the preseason, that he's looked fresh, he's continued to want to do extra drills, everything like that, looking really good? Or is it all fun and good until we get to the games and then all of a sudden, injury?
I mean, with me, I would love to sit here, get on a soapbox and say that Le'Veon Bell is back. Because there's a part of me that thinks he's going to play like a man possessed and give us one of the best seasons that we've seen from Le'Veon. Here's the question that I have when it comes to Le'Veon, and it has nothing to do with Le'Veon. It has everything to do with googly-eyed Adam Gase. And the reason why...
Really odd to look at him. I'm sorry.
Like, the reason why I say that is it depends on what we're going to see from the run game with Adam Gase in New York. Because if you look at his time, I'll ask you this. When I go through Adam Gase's chronological from offensive coordinator to head coach, do you want me to start from 2013 and go to 2018? Or start from 2018 and go
13
back?
to 18.
Okay. So in 2013, this was the first time He was an offensive coordinator, was a quarterback's coach with the Broncos, was promoted in between 12 and 13 to OC. In 2013, this is when Peyton Manning was with the Broncos. You had Sean Moreno, played 16 games, started 15. But you also had Monty Ball, played in 16 games as well. They split carries. Sean Moreno was the main back at 241 carries, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. He was also targeted 74 times in the receiving game, 3 touchdowns, almost 550 yards. Then in 2014, you had C.J. Anderson was the main back with some other guys behind him. They had 3 guys behind him. Hillman and Ball were kind of injured that year. Juwan Thompson played in 15 as well. But C.J. Anderson is the main back. 179 yards. Ronnie Hillman in 8 games at 106. But Anderson was also targeted 44 times in the pass game. Then his lone year in Chicago, Matt Forte was the guy, played 13 games. Langford played 16 games. They had a split of 218 carries to 148 carries. Of course, Jeremy Langford started 2 of the games. Kadeem Carey started 1 as well in the 3-game absence of Matt Forte. Matt Forte was also targeted 58 times in the receiving game. Then we get to Miami, and things kind of start off okay, but then are not, where Jay Ajayi was the main guy his first year as a head coach. 260 carries, 1,200 yards. I should also note that Matt Forte in those 13 games, 898, and C.J. Anderson, 848. So he's only had 2 backs that have had over 1,000 yards, Ajayi and Sean Moreno. And in the 15 games, Ajayi was only targeted 35 times. Then in 2013, it was mainly Kenyon Drake. Jay Ajayi went down after 7. So it was a split between 138 and 133 carries. And then in 2018, Frank Gore played 14, had 156, but Kenyon Drake also had 112. If Le'Veon is by himself the de facto back, are we going to see a running back by committee where it's like, hey, he's going to have most of the carries, but we also have Ty Montgomery who can spell some also and have a split system going? Or are we going to see what we saw in 2016 and what we saw in 2013 where it's like, hey, you'll get between maybe 240, 260. We're not going to run you out the building, but you're still going to get your touches. And could we see a 240, 260 attempt mark and still have Le'Veon be an 1,000-yard rusher for the Jets?
Le'Veon said recently that he would carry the ball 500 times to win a Super Bowl for the Jets. So he's ready. He clearly believes that he could take on a huge workload, and he wants to. I think the Jets are going to, I don't want to say monitor, but if he looks good, he's taking the carries, he's looking fresh, his legs are good, he's moving, he's cutting, he's doing everything, and he's looking good, go. Run with him. Keep it going. Keep pounding it to him. I think that that's going to be one thing that they'll look at, and if they believe that at some point in the season they need to spell him a little bit more, they'll do that as well. But I think right now there will be no pitch count or anything for Le'Veon Bell. I think that he will be off to the races, and they're going to be taking the leash and the collar off of him because they want to see how far he can go.
So here's another thing that I kind of look at, though, is if I'm the Jets, take a look at Pittsburgh. Look back at the history of Le'Veon, where in 2016 had a really good year, had over 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. He was targeted 94 times, had 616 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns through the air. A good season. But he had 261 attempts. Reason why, although he was injured and only played 9 games, you still had D'Angelo Williams behind him who gave you almost 100 carries that year through 9 games. The year after, Le'Veon has similar amount of yards, didn't have too many, but shot from 261 to 332. So, like, I look at those, 60 more carries, and I go, those are useless carries in my mind because he only had about, not even 20 more yards than the year before. And his receptions, he was targeted more receiving, had only, 40 more receiving yards and the same amount of touchdowns. So it was like, it was useless usage in 2017. But who did he have behind him? Rookie James Conner, who only had 32 carries in 14 games. How much are the Jets going to lean on Ty Montgomery? Not saying that Le'Veon, it's going to be split 50-50, but I think that's important, that Ty Montgomery is going to get... I see this Jets team, and maybe it's because I'm hopeful for the Jets this year. I think they'll be 6-10. It'll be a good 6-10 season for them. Le'Veon Bell, I think, will be great. They'll try to shoot that 260 mark. They go to like 275, that's okay. But that 260 mark, because Ty Montgomery is still going to get carries and is still going to spell Le'Veon so they don't have to overuse him and can put Le'Veon in good situations. That's why if I'm a fantasy owner, like if I've got a late first-round pick, I'm looking to snipe Le'Veon because I think he's going to have a really good year this year. It's just is Adam Gase and this offense going to put him in the right situations to where he has that 2016 Le'Veon season and not that 27 Le'Veon season where he has useless carries.
So I'm really interested because at one point, do you remember hearing that when the Jets got him and Gase was there and they were like, they might end up trading Le'Veon Bell because he doesn't fit in Adam Gase's system? Like, what in the hell are you talking about? Why, in God's name, would you be trading Le'Veon Bell for any reason at all? I mean, that makes no sense. So I haven't heard that for quite a few months, but that didn't make any sense to me. And since I'm not hearing it anymore, I'm assuming that has kind of died down. What, you think all of a sudden Ty Montgomery's going to be good? The guy sucks. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason. Guy. There's no reason you would be going to anyone else. Le'Veon can do it all. He's a receiver. He's a runner. Hell, he could probably throw for a touchdown if he needed to. So I think Le'Veon Bell's going to have a really, really good season. My biggest thing is he just needs to stay healthy. Otherwise, people will criticize him even more for sitting out all of last year, and they'll say, well, he just wasn't in football shape. It's because he sat out all last year, which would be incorrect. The guy's staying in shape. He's not necessarily doing everything that the team is doing. He's still staying in shape himself, though. But I really want to see him do well. I think that if he can bounce back from last year, as much as people hated seeing him out, Pittsburgh Steeler fans, football fans in general, and certainly fantasy owners of Le'Veon Bell, I think people are rooting for him to have a really good year this year.
And if I'm looking at Ty Montgomery behind him, if I'm a Jet fan, I'm hoping to see 2016 Ty Montgomery, where it's like, okay, he gave us 77 carries, almost like just over 450 yards, 3 touchdowns, but then added some receptions, was targeted 56 times, caught the ball 44, gave us some good receptions. And Ty just needs to be a good spell for Le'Veon, because with Le'Veon, I think the key is, at the most, you get him about 270, 275 carries. Your sweet spot is that 260 mark. Between 260 and 270 is the sweet spot. The question is, with the offensive line, are they going to be strong enough to have it to where he's at 260 and over 1,000 compared to 300 carries and are at the same mark? Like, that's going to be the big question is this Jets team going to be ready to support Le'Veon like he needs?
Many questions still abound in the Le'Veon Bell situation,
but I'd take him in the first round.
I don't think that he will be there late in the first round. You said you're going to try and snipe him late. I don't think you'll be able to snipe him late.
Especially because of the Zeke situation, too. If more people start passing on a Zeke, passing on a Todd Gurley, Le'Veon might go sooner than you may think.
And I think he will. Moving to our final topic here for NFL fantasy, we are moving to a wide receiver who believes that he could get 3,000 yards this season.
Funny.
Could he do it? It's Julio Jones. And Ricky, I'll throw it over to you first. Julio Jones thinks he could do 3,000 yards. Do you think that's possible? Could he even do 2,000?
No. And the reason being, I'm going to read the exact quote. He was talking to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and he said, "I'm going crazy this year. I'm going crazy. I've been doing everything that I need to do. I'm taking care of my body physically and mentally. I'll be ready to go. I'm not a prediction type guy, but I might mess around and go 3,000. And they say to pull it off, he would have to average 187.5 yards per game to go 3,000. The only time someone had the leader for single yards in single season yards for receiving, do you know who it is? It's an easy name. Best receiver I think I've ever seen. Well, second best receiver I've seen in my life because I watched Randy Moss. He played for the Lions.
Calvin Johnson. He had 1964 in his 2012 season. I remember that season, yes.
Do you know who the number 2 in most receiving yards for a season is?
Still current?
Yeah, he's playing right now. We're talking about him right now.
Julio Jones.
Julio Jones. In 2015, he had 1871. So maybe 2,000. If he has a really good year, maybe 2,000. Maybe he cracks for like 2,250, but I don't see 3,000. The thing I would see is with the confidence of this team, with the confidence of him, maybe I think that 2,000 is the best. Maybe he's shooting for 3,000, so he hits 2,000. You know, shoot for the moon. If you miss, maybe you'll hit a star. Maybe that's what we're going with here. But it'll be interesting to see what we get from Julio. Because even if he has a 2,000-yard season, that's good for fantasy owners.
Oh,
that's
my
really
gosh.
Good for
That's 200
owners.
Points right there for 2,000 yards, not counting any touchdowns. That's outstanding.
Let's see. I'm going to look up how many fantasy points he had in 2015 when he had that record-breaking season.
So, Ricky, Julio Jones has been in the league now for, I believe, 8 years, drafted out of Alabama, great wide receiver.
Yeah,
Julio Jones, is he close to slowing down at all?
No, not a chance. I think with A.J. Green, well, even before A.J. Green going down, Julio was ranked behind A.J., but he's a guy for the last, basically since 2014, you can bank on him having 1,400 receiving yards. He has not had less than 1,400 receiving yards since 2014, and he's had his lowest touchdowns was in 2017 when he only had 3 touchdowns. Like, otherwise, he's getting at least 6 scores per game.
Per year.
Per game would be crazy. If I look fantasy too, that year that he had the second most receiving yards ever, he scored a total of 235 fantasy points. That was year 2 into this 1,000-yard range that he's had. Last year he had 213. So, I mean, yet again, like, he's a guy that should be one of the top wide receivers taken. If you're a keeper, you're obviously going to keep him. But I want you to talk for a second because you actually have a question about Julio Jones. Because he's so good, you're in a little bit of a conundrum in your dynasty league.
So I am. I currently suck. My team is pretty bad.
Did you miss the playoffs last year?
I missed the playoffs last year for the very first time ever. I've been playing fantasy football in that league since 6th grade. Mm-hmm. Clearly, I'm far removed from 6th grade, and that was the first time I missed the playoffs. So I also was literally the worst team in the league last season. I got a trophy to prove it, the toilet bowl trophy. So right now I have the number 1 overall pick. Mm-hmm. Number 1 overall pick. And I reached out to the person who owns Julio Jones and asked, would you trade Julio Jones to get the number 1 overall pick? They said yes.
Okay.
So I am interested in doing that. Also, something on the table in this whole scenario. I also have Travis Kelce, by far best player on my team. The number 1 tight end in the league, hands down. I will argue that with you a long time. So I have Kelce, and I'm talking to another team owner to possibly trade Kelce and my 3rd round pick for Devontae Adams and their 1st round pick. So my thought is, if they are willing to do that, which it would really break my heart to trade Travis Kelce, because we've been through a lot together, and I'm a Chiefs fan. Second, Bears are first, but Chiefs fan as well, and I am a big fan of Travis Kelce. So to trade him would be tough. But if that team owner would agree and say yes, they would do that trade with Devontae Adams and their 1st rounder, I could trade my 1st rounder, 1st overall, get Julio Jones, trade off Kelce and my 3rd, get his 1st round pick, so jump back into the 1st round, only end up not having a 3rd, so my 1st, my 2nd, and get Devontae Adams. I would then have Devontae Adams, who's ranked right now in a lot of things that I've seen as the number 2 wide receiver in fantasy, and Julio Jones, who is ranked right now, I'm seeing, as the number 3 wide receiver in fantasy, with DeAndre Hopkins as the number 1 overall wide receiver.
So ESPN actually has Devonta Adams ranked number 1.
Okay.
Not by much, though. They have him as a projected 194.3, Hopkins at 193.6. So it's splitting hairs.
And where's Julio?
Julio is ranked 4th. They're thinking he's going to have 193.7. For some reason, they got Michael Thomas at 3, although they think he'll have 13 less points than all of them, which is weird. So there's no confusion, because it was a lot of explaining. So the 2 deals are, number 1 is you would give up the 1st overall pick, and on YouTube I'm going to have a graphic come up for this. Mm-hmm. 1st overall pick you're giving up, you're getting Julio Jones.
Correct.
Then in a 2nd deal, you are giving up Travis Kelce.
Yes.
And getting the 6th overall pick and Devonta Adams.
Hold on now. So I'd be giving up Travis Kelce and my 3rd overall pick.
Okay.
I would be receiving Devontae Adams and their 1st pick.
Yes. So
their 1st round pick, which would be 6th overall.
So you're giving up Travis Kelce and your 3rd round pick.
Correct.
And getting back
a 1st rounder,
the 6th overall pick, which is a 1st rounder, and Devonta Adams.
Correct.
Here's
potentially. Now, none of these deals have been set. They're out there, and we're mulling them.
So that means you're Tyler Boyd, because originally you had one for me that was your 3rd overall pick and Tyler Boyd.
Yes.
That's off the table then with the Travis Kelce one.
It's looking like it would be.
Here, and obviously down below, I'm also going to put this on Twitter to get Brandon some help, because obviously that's why we're doing this, to get him some fantasy help. Here are my qualms with it. Take the Julio one, put it aside. Like, with the Julio one, the only qualm I have is how your league works is, since you don't know who's going to be available at number 1.
And to Ricky's point, too, is that what he means is we have, for our Dynasty League,
a picnic.
we have a picnic where we kind of come together, have our keepers, do our trades, stuff like that. And that is a week before we draft. We don't know until that point, and that picnic is not until the 18th, so multiple weeks out still. We don't know then until who's going to be available. Right now, all we know are the rookies that are out there. We don't know the people, the other players that will be in there.
Because obviously you don't know who's being kept and who's not. The other question I asked you, and this is just for if someone else has this question, is the guy cool with you saying, hey, let's have the picnic happen. Let me see who's available at number 1, and then I can make a decision for you. Like, is he okay? Like, have you asked that? She. I shouldn't assume they. Is she okay with that? Like, because that's a big qualm for me is I don't want to make the deal And then being like, because obviously if Julio's available, you would maybe take him number one. But the question I asked you, and I'm going to have you list this off in a second, is running back plays into it as well. And with the number one overall pick, if I can get a really good running backs to me are more valuable than wide receivers.
So, and I told you in a text, I gave you my running backs I currently have and the wide receivers that I currently have. So the wide receivers I currently have, it's a depleted group. I have Corey Davis, Christian Kirk, Cortland Sutton, and
Do you want me to pull it up?
And somebody else who's not good.
As we both whip out our phones to pull it up.
Cortland Sutton, and who the hell else is it? That's how bad they are. I forget. Oh, and Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, honestly, probably the most productive one out of the group last season. So those are my wide receivers. Cortland Sutton, Calvin Ridley, Corey Davis, Christian Kirk. My running backs, Mark Ingram, Kerryon Johnson, Marlon Mack.
Yeah.
So I feel, well, none of those running backs right now is a stud. I think Kerryon Johnson's going to have a breakout season, be very good. I think Marlon Mack is going to have a breakout season, continue to be very good. Mark Ingram, I may try and flip to somebody else to potentially, if that Kelsey trade goes through, to potentially get another tight end or another pick or whatever. But I don't have the receivers right now. The receiver that I was going to keep out of that group was probably going to be Cortland Sutton. And then I think he's going to have a better year, especially in the red zone. If I could add Julio Jones and Devontae Adams to that group, that would be outstanding. I understand. I think running back's more important too, but right now at wide receiver, that's where I'm really hurting.
And here's why I say this is, obviously it also comes into how many of these guys are going to be kept. But I'm looking at ESPN right now, and they've got Marlon Mack in their projections is 17th. Right behind him is Kerryon Johnson at 18. And then Mark Ingram is at 25. And I'm just going to really quickly read off the other 16. And you can tell me, you have a better understanding of your league. You can kind of decide for me then after hearing these names, who do you think could possibly be available or be kept. So at 16, there's Derrick Henry. At 15, Josh Jacobs. At 14, Nick Chubb. 13, Devonta Freeman. 12, Leonard Fournette. 11, Dalvin Cook. 10, Joe Mixon. 9, James Conner. And then this is where we kind of this is the top 10 where we kind of get into guys that are probably not going to be there at 1. Todd Gurley at 8. David Johnson at 7. Melvin Gordon at 6. Le'Veon at 5. Kamara at 4. McCaffrey at 3. Zeke at 2. Saquon at 1. And you're not expecting a Saquon to be there, but how many of those running backs above even a Marlon Mack do you think could be there and could be worth that number 1 pick?
Maybe 3 to 4.
Which ones?
Josh Jacobs.
Yet again, he's a rookie too, which is interesting.
Yeah, so Josh Jacobs will definitely be there, clearly. Josh Jacobs will be there. Dalvin Cook, potentially. Could you read them off again from 16 up a little bit?
So, Derrick Henry.
Maybe Henry, but probably not.
Nick Chubb.
No, he won't.
Devonta Freeman.
Maybe he could, but I don't like him.
Leonard Fournette.
No, he won't be.
Joe Mixon.
He won't be.
And then James Conner, Todd Gurley.
He won't be. They won't be.
They won't be.
So maybe 2, maybe 3.
Okay.
And that's where I look at and I think Dalvin Cook and Josh Jacobs are the 2 running backs who I would look at and say, you know what, they're maybe worth taking with the first round pick. But the first overall pick, I don't want to risk it on a guy who could get hurt in week 1, Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
I also am a little weary of going after Josh Jacobs with the first overall pick and hoping that Oakland utilizes him the right way. So what I would feel maybe more comfortable about is if let's say the trade with Julio Jones does happen. The trade with Travis Kelce does happen. If that were to be the case, I would jump back into the first round, have the 6th overall pick, and could still potentially take a Josh Jacobs or take a Dalvin Cook and not feel as guilty that I used the number 1 overall pick on them. You know what I'm saying there?
Here's what I'm thinking. And this is the reason why I also throw that out. Like we said, Julio's projected on ESPN to be the 4th best wide receiver. Your top wide receiver, if I just scroll down, I'm going to try to find the one that's your best. I might have to scroll for a little bit.
Yes.
Because they're not good. Like Tyler Boyd, who you asked me about in a trade where you would give up your 3rd round for Tyler Boyd, he's ranked at 25th. Calvin Ridley. Yeah, Calvin Ridley is your top guy. He's at 28th. Then I'm just going to see if I can. Cortland Sutton is at 42. Kirk is at 36, so above even a Cortland Sutton. And then Corey Davis is at 38. So you're sitting in that 30 range. The other thing, too, is there going to be a wide receiver that's going to be there? Is there going to be a guy like, I don't think Adam Thielen's there.
They're going to be kept. I'm telling you, they will be kept. There was one year that who's the wide receiver from the Chargers? Keenan Allen. Mm-hmm. One year, Keenan Allen was sitting there, and it's like, holy hell, how did he get here? Mm-hmm. Like, that should not have happened.
Here's what I'm thinking, though. And it's not the Julio trade that worries me. It's the other one. Here's what I'm thinking. Make the Julio trade. Because Julio for a number 1 pick is fine. Like, that's good. Like,
I'm not going to find a Julio Jones in the first round.
And you could probably, there might be a wide receiver there at your 2nd overall pick or even a running back that you're like, okay, cool. First pick in the 2nd round, I can get a guy I'm happy with. It's that Travis Kelce one I don't like. Because I get your point of jumping back into the first round. I get also getting Devonta Adams. But the Devonta Adams, Travis Kelce part of it, yes, you're moving up from 3rd round to 1st round, but then you're losing your 3rd round pick. So basically, you're losing your 3rd round pick, which I think could be more valuable than your 1st, because value-wise, where there might be someone available that first pick of the 3rd round that's a better value there than who'd be available first pick of the draft compared to Julio Jones. So what I would do is make the Julio trade, but don't make the Travis Kelce one. And the reason why I'm saying that is not just the value thing, but you're beefing up your wide receivers and decimating your tight ends, because the tight end position is very, 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 very thin. If you look at tight ends last year, Zach Ertz had the most receptions, had the most yards. I'm going to go to yards, not receptions, actually, when it comes to this. So when we look at yards, George Kittle actually had the most yards last year with 1377. He had 5 touchdowns. Travis Kelce was number 2, 1336 with 10 touchdowns. Zach Ertz had 1163 with 8 touchdowns. Then after that, Jared Cook had an okay year, 896 with 6 touchdowns. After that, Eric Ebron at 750. You've got Rob Gronkowski, who not even going to be in the league, but he had 686. Austin Hooper. There is such a, like, if you have Kelce or Ertz, I'm not budging on either of those two guys, because you've got the best at that position to where, yeah, you're beefing up your wide receiver, but I think you could get a better value at wide receiver that you can't get at tight end, because out of Kelce, Ertz, and Kittle, the number 4 tight end on ESPN is Evan Ingram which the projections between Kelsey and Ingram are 180 to 110 total points. So you're losing 70 whole points in just that category, to where there could be another wide receiver that you can find, and you're also getting Julio. So it's like you've got Julio, and wide receiver wise, if I even scroll down, let's say, because do you think, just riddle me these dumb questions, but riddle me. Would Tyler Lockett be kept in your league, do you think? He's 23rd.
You know, it's always...
And it's hard to say.
You just never know sometimes with these owners.
Mm-hmm. And we're playing a dangerous game here, because, like, Tyler Lockett's at 23. But if he's available...
Based on his season last year, yeah, I think someone would probably keep him.
And plus Doug Baldwin not being there. You've also got guys like, at 30, Robbie Anderson. I don't know if he's on a team. I don't know if someone's going to use a keeper spot to keep him. He's projected 133 this year. You got Will Fuller coming off an injury. Is someone going to keep him coming off of that injury? D.D. Westbrook with the Jaguars, now that he's got someone throwing to him. And, I mean, now we're getting into kind of your territory of where your guys are, to where I feel like Julio Jones is enough to where I'd rather have Julio and Kelsey than Julio, Devonta Adams. That's the one I would say, can we maybe make a deal after the picnic? Because if someone's there at 6, or could be there at 6, that you really like more than, like, because then you're getting Devonta Adams, and if there's maybe like somebody running back wise that you can get there, then that makes it interesting. It makes it a little bit better. But I just worry about tight ends, because you have the best tight end, one of the two best. Zach Ertz is the only one that can challenge you for that.
George Kittle potentially,
but every week except for one, you don't need to worry about your tight end spot. Whereas I just feel like if you trade Travis Kelce, you're not going to find the equal return at the tight end position, and that could basically hurt you.
No, I agree. I was kicking the tires a little bit on Hunter Henry from the Los Angeles Chargers, who I did have a couple of years back, but he got hurt, unfortunately, and then he didn't play last year. So I was reaching out to somebody just in case we both parties decided to do the Kelce and Adams move. Yeah. I could still potentially have that tight end there, because I do think that Hunter Henry will probably have a nice season and be a good red zone threat target. But I don't know if I would be giving up enough to be able to get Hunter Henry, even coming off of a season in which he was injured the entire year.
And the other thing that I think about, too, is I feel like there's going to be more guys running back and maybe wide receiver wise that turn into reliable guys more so than tight ends. Like, for example, I think of Austin Eckler, where was he amazing every single week? No, but like he was solid most weeks. We picked him up on our team. To where tight ends, you just don't see that.
Well, and how big was that, I think, magnified last year when so many tight ends did get hurt and people are scrambling and people are losing games and struggling because they don't have anyone good at the tight end position.
And that's why that trade worries me, because it's like you have the best one. Why would you go ahead and kind of screw that up, you know?
No, I hear you.
I'm looking on our side, and fantasy won't let me into the MVP league from last year. I don't know why. Because I just wanted to look at our team and stuff to see what we had last year and kind of who came up. But, like, that's why I would make the Julio trade. Like, I'm kind of talking myself into that one. I wouldn't make the other one, because Travis Kelce is the linchpin in that trade, to where I would feel really good having Travis Kelce. Unless you feel like he's going to...
I do feel really good having Travis Kelce.
I was almost going to give away some keys to the kiss of death, which I won't say. I'll keep that tight-lipped. But, like, if you thought the Chiefs were going to have a bad year for whatever reason, then maybe get rid of them. But, like,
well, they're not. Things are pointing up.
Yeah.
I mean, just in the sense that Tyreek Hill is not being suspended. That, you know, they've got Damian Williams, who's proven to be a pretty good running back. Patrick Mahomes is still there. They bring on McCole Hardman. He looks like he could be, you know, the Tyreek Hill that's just a little, you know, not Tyreek Hill. And then you have Travis Kelce continue to do his thing.
Yeah.
I completely get where you're coming from. I'm just looking at it from a standpoint of I am so thin at the wide receiver position. To get guys who are 2 in the top 5 would be outstanding. But then, yes, how do you fill that tight end position?
Also looking at it, too, of... Here, let me pull up really quick. The last thing I'll kind of look at is rookie wide receivers, too. Like, how many...
DK Metcalf, and that was one that I had mentioned to you.
the only one that you would think about? Like,
I'm not impressed with the other ones. I'm not impressed with the other wide receivers.
I mean... The one that I really like, and it depends, is N'Keal Harry, only because he's got Tom Brady throwing to him. And he's a guy that can, like...
But that also starts to be and I understand Gronk's not going to be there, so he's not going to take up anything, but you never know which wide receiver to have after Julian Edelman over there in New England.
Yeah, depending on how late the pick was, like, I would take a stab on N'Keal Harry. Marquise Brown is going to be interesting because, I mean, besides Josh Brown, because they've got Josh Brown now over there, and I believe they've got somebody else that I'm quickly going to pull up so I don't sound like an idiot. Willie Snead. Right. Oh, they don't have John Brown. That's right. He left Baltimore and went
to the Bills.
Else. To the Bills. That's right. Their top wide receivers in Baltimore now are Willie Snead, Miles Boykin, and Marquise Brown in the slot. So, like, Miles Boykin, he might not be one you draft. I mean, depending on how someone goes. But, like, he's one that could be one of those where no one drafts him because he's a rookie. But then he plays very well because he's getting the spotlight there in Baltimore. And it's like, holy shit, we got to pick him up. He's a kid out of Notre Dame. But, yeah, there's no, like, wide receiver that really, like, sparks. Unless, like, a Riley Ridley has a good year with the Bears. N'Keal Harry's would be the one that I look at just because he's got Tom Brady throwing to him. But, like, you know, Tom Brady will throw to anyone if he's open. It doesn't matter who it is. Plus, Tom Brady makes wide receivers better. So, you guys obviously help Brandon out, but I would trade for Julio. I wouldn't make that second trade. I'd keep Travis Kelce and be solid at the tight end position.
All right. Well, Ricky, thank you very much. I appreciate your input, your insight. And
that's why
we will
you come and ask me these hard
how
questions.
It goes. We will see how it goes. But I would also love your insight and your thoughts as well, because I have to have a better season this year. It's just it took a real toll on me. I think I got my first gray hair this past fantasy football season.
You don't want to get
because
those.
of that. No, not at 26. But that is going to wrap it up for this NFL fantasy podcast. It has been a lot of fun. Many topics covered, but certainly not all of them, not anywhere near it. But we hope that you enjoyed it. We hope that you had a fun time listening, and it was thought-provoking for you to get you thinking as well. Again, to support this podcast and all podcasts here at MVP, just $1. You can head over to patreon.com, become a patron today, right now. Go. But again, thank you so much for tuning in and listening and watching, and we will be coming to you again in a couple of weeks. Stay tuned for that. Until then, take care, everybody.